Well, for more on the hacking scandal, I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Jason Wilson. He's a lecturer in journalism and communication at the University of Canberra. G'day, Jason. Thanks very much for coming in to talk to us this morning.
Thanks, Nick.
This story, the hacking scandal, has been around for years in the UK, but it's only been in the last week or so that it's sort of turned into a wildfire. Now, why has it taken so long for this to bubble up?
Look, I think the story's been ongoing for a long time, as you say, but I think in the UK, public sympathies were really aroused in the last week because it turned out that it wasn't just celebrities and politicians who are getting their privacy invaded. It actually turned out to be ordinary people, some of whom were the victims of crime, terrorist atrocities. So I think that people's moral revulsion really kicked in at about that point, when it turned out that it was ordinary people like them who were vulnerable to this practice.
Okay, now obviously Rupert Murdoch has got a bid in to buy control of B Sky B, or as I understand it, he already controls B Sky B, but he wants outright ownership of the news channel in the UK. How's that going to play out in your view?
Well, it's difficult to say at this point. Certainly, Ofcom, who are the communications regulator in the UK, I mean, they're going to have a look at this now and decide whether News Corporation are fit and proper persons to sort of have complete control over B Sky B. The reason I think that they dropped the newspaper like a hot potato is because B Sky B is the much bigger target. There's a lot more revenue. It's quite a cash cow, and in fact it dwarfs the importance of the papers to the business. So, yeah, that's the real game here, I suppose, and really, News International have kind of shot themselves in the foot if that's their objective at this point, by the looks.
Okay, could they put in place some sort of strategy to try and rescue that situation, or are they going to look at basically just pulling out of that project?
Well, I mean, they've given every indication that they're still wanting to acquire 100% of B Sky B. A lot depends, I think, on public opinion, on how public opinion turns, and whether there are any more revelations, and whether this is a practice that's not just being confined to News of the World. There are hints today that other newspapers in News International stable have been doing these kind of practices as well.
Yeah, but obviously the fact that this has been referred now to the competition watchdog in the UK, I guess buys everybody a bit of breathing space. It buys the British government some breathing space. It also buys News International a bit of breathing space.
Well, again, it depends if there are more revelations. I mean, there's no sign at this point that we've come to the end of this. I think this story is probably going to run and run. Every day in the last week there's been more. We'll just have to see if any more emerges over the next few days. Okay. If things go quiet for a while, maybe they can make those arguments, but there's no sign of it stopping at this point.
Okay, now we seem to be getting indications now that other mastheads in the News International stable could be also implicated in this these sort of criminal practices as they've been characterised. Now, what can we say about the Australian context here? I mean, is there going to be a lot of people, I guess, flicking back through archives of articles that have been written in this country, questioning perhaps the methods that might have been applied to gaining the information? Yeah,
well, the first thing to say is that there's absolutely no suggestion, at this point, that this has happened in Australia. And John Hartigan, the CEO of News Limited, came out with a very strong statement the other day saying that this went against everything that he felt the organisation stood for. Although the thing that we need to perhaps be worried about is that this story was really pursued by a rival newspaper in the UK. They've got a national newspaper market. The Guardian, which is another national newspaper, really pursued this story for a very long time, five years almost. The concern we may have here is that, is there a newspaper, an alternative national newspaper that could really have the resources to challenge News Limited in Australia in the way that News International in the UK has been challenged by The Guardian? Would the New York Times take an interest in an Australian newspaper story in the way that they've taken an interest in what's happened in the UK? And, the New York Times helped kick that story along. These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. These are powerful organisations. Is our media market in Australia at the moment constituted in such a way that they could be held to account in the same way that they have been in the UK.
I guess there's also questions too about the craft of journalism itself. I mean, traditionally journalists have been able to claim that their sources are sacrosanct. That has been one of the tenets of the craft. But now this scandal raises whole new issues about the way that information can be gathered.
Yeah, it's a pretty sad time, I think, for anyone who's concerned with journalism and concerned with the role of journalism in democracies. I don't think anyone should be happy about a national newspaper closing in the UK. And yeah, it does have kind of reputational effects for anyone who's practising the craft, unfortunately, and it may take a while for the profession to recover from that.
Okay, Dr. Jason Wilson from the University of Canberra, thanks very much for coming in to talk to us about this.
Thanks a lot, Nick. A pleasure.